Hola a todos. Hi everyone, and welcome to a Speech Bubble Languages Spanish session with me, Louise, here at the Luna Centre in East Kilbride. Today's session is suitable for intermediate Spanish language learners. In today's session, we're going to be exploring some grammatical concepts, namely the two future tenses in Spanish. You're going to get lots of practice in conjugating the verbs and also in translating them as well. So let's crack on with today's lesson. There are two future tenses in Spanish, and we're going to look at both of them during today's session. The first one is the near future, and the second is the future, also known as the simple future. It's great for us to take a look at what we mean in English about these two tenses before we go any further in the session. The near future in Spanish is the equivalent to I am going to play, I am going to do, he is going to go out, we are going to learn Spanish, they are going to live in Spain. The near future is the going to tense in English, or as we say up here in Scotland, in Glasgow, goni. The other way of talking about the future is to use the future tense or that simple future tense. When we translate the future, we use the word will. Instead of saying, I'm going to go to bed, I'm saying, I will go to bed. Both of these are talking about events that are going to take place in the future, but a kind of slight difference between them, with the near future using going to do something and the future using will in its English translation. The first one we're going to take a look at is the near future. To conjugate the near future in Spanish, we do something very similar to what we do in English. We use the verb to go. So we need the verb ir in Spanish, but we need to conjugate them in the present tense. How do we say the verb to go in the present tense? To get you started, I've given you voy. I go, I am going. Can you remember the rest of the verb conjugation? Voy, vas, va, vamos, vais, van. I am going, voy, you, vas, he, she, it, va. We is vamos, you, plural is vais, and finally they is van. Voy, vas, va, vamos, vais, van. In conjugating the near future tense, you take the appropriate part of the verb ir, voy, vas, va, vamos, vais, or van. We then say a, and then the thing that we're going to do, we use that verb and it's infinitive. We keep them in the to format of the verb. Voy a, vas a, and then so on and so forth. Shall we take a look at a couple of them in action? Saying what you're going to do. Voy a estudiar. Voy a estudiar. I am going to study. Vas a escuchar. Vas a escuchar. You are going to listen. Va a cantar. Va a cantar. He is going to sing. It could be she or it as well, remember. Vamos a comer en el restaurante. We are going to eat in the restaurant. Vais a hablar español con fluidez. Vais a hablar español con fluidez. You are going to speak Spanish fluently. ¿Van a cocinar esta noche? Van a cocinar esta noche. They are going to cook tonight. So we take the part of the verb ir that we need. We use a, almost like glue, and we stick the verb that we're going to do on the end of that, keeping him in his infinitive with the AR, ER, or IR on the end of the verb. It's a great tense, isn't it? Can you form some sentences then in Spanish? ¿Cómo se dice? How would we say? I'm going to move myself out the road too, and you'll see behind me are some different verbs and their infinitives in Spanish. If you're an intermediate learner, you should know what these mean. So try to pronounce them after me. Bailar, sacar fotos, esquiar, pintar, montar en bici, escuchar música, tocar la guitarra, trabajar en el jardín. So, ¿cómo se dice? How would we say? ¿Cómo se dice I am going to take photos? Voy a sacar fotos. You are going to listen to music. Vas a escuchar música. He's going to work in the garden. Va a trabajar en el jardín. We're going to paint. Vamos a pintar. You're going to dance. Vais a bailar. And they are going to go a bike ride. Van a montar en bici. Excellent work, everyone. So with our next activity, I've mixed the sentences up. I've kept them in the near future. I've moved all the words about. ¿Podéis poner las frases en el orden correcto? Can you all put the words back into the right order again? As an additional challenge, we've got a question formation and also a negative sneaking in there too. Hit pause as you work your way through our unjumbling task. Okay, number one, hopefully you've got it right with voy a comprar vino. I'm going to buy wine. Vamos a salir esta noche. We are going to go out tonight. Vas a llegar tarde. You're going to arrive late. A negative here. No va a estudiar mucho. He's not going to study much. ¿Vais a venir a la fiesta? Are you all going to come to the party? Van a coger el autobús. They're going to catch the bus. And finally, voy a ducharme por la mañana. I'm going to have a shower in the morning. I hope you managed those sentences, putting them back into the right order. In the next activity, we're going to stick within the near future tense, but we're going to play our word wall activity. You'll see that on the left, I've got again an unjumble, but these sentences are bigger and much more complex. I want you to hit the pause button as each one appears on the screen and see if you can reorganize those sentences to create correct sentences in Spanish. Don't forget to try to translate them back into the English as well. Here's our first word wall. Hit pause. Mañana voy a leer el nuevo libro que compré. Tomorrow I'm going to read the new book that I bought. Word wall 2, hit pause again. El año que viene voy a viajar a Francia para estudiar francés. Next year, I'm going to travel to France to study French. Word wall 3, hit that pause button. Mi hermano va a estudiar medicina en la universidad. My brother is going to study medicine at uni. Word wall 4, 4. El mes que viene vamos a celebrar el cumpleaños de mi abuela. Next month, we're going to celebrate my granny's birthday. Word wall 5 now. Después del trabajo, voy a cenar con mis amigos en el restaurante nuevo. After work, I'm going to eat dinner with my friends in the new restaurant. We're almost there. Word wall 6. En el futuro, voy a aprender a tocar la guitarra. In the future, I'm going to learn to play guitar. Word wall 7. En unas semanas voy a terminar un proyecto de investigación. In a few weeks, I'm going to be finished my investigation project. You'll be glad to know this is your final one, word wall 8. El verano próximo voy a visitar a mis primos en la costa. Next summer, I'm going to visit my cousins on the coast. Muy bien hecho a todos. Well done, everybody, on working your way through the first of the 2 future tenses in Spanish. We're now going to take a look at the future tense. If you remember correctly, this is the one which we translate using the word will in English. I will play. The future tense is also known as the simple future. It's not as simple as the near future, but let's take a look at them all the same. We're going to start with our friend hablar, the verb to speak in Spanish. He helps us learn our conjugation endings formations of our verbs for all the ones that are regular AR ending verbs. Let's pop our pronouns up onto the screen in the order that we know them in, and let's stick our verb down the side of each of them. Now, for those of you that are familiar with conjugating verbs, which I'm sure you will be at this level, this is quite an unusual step that we're about to take. What we would usually do here is remove the AR, wouldn't we? We would be left with the stem. But for the future tense, we leave the verb completely untouched. We leave him in his infinitives, and the endings are going to get tacked onto the end of the infinitives. Let's take a look at what hablar looks like then, shall we? I will speak. Hablaré. Accent up on the E. Try it. Hablaré. You will speak. Hablarás. An accent appearing again. Hablarás. He, she, or it will speak. Hablará. Accents all the way down so far. Hablaré, hablarás, hablará. We're dropping them for the next ones though. Hablaremos. We will speak. Hablaremos. You all will speak. Hablaréis. And finally, they will speak. Hablarán. So lots of accents all the way down there, with the exception of the we part of the verb. These endings are also quite similar to the present tense, aren't they? Don't forget, they are added onto the infinitives. Let's say that verb together. Hablaré, hablarás, hablará, hablaremos, hablaréis, hablarán. Shall we try again? Hablaré, hablarás, hablará, hablaremos, hablaréis, hablarán. Excelente. Make a wee note of that if you haven't already done so. Let's do some practice then, shall we? Here on the left-hand side, I have a series of AR verbs. Caminar, dibujar, hablar, escuchar, and trabajar. Can you create some future tense sentences for me? Form the verbs and see if you can complete the sentences too by adding the words in brackets in Spanish too. Hit pause here as you work your way through the task. I will walk to work. Caminaré al trabajo. She will listen a song. In Spanish, we don't listen to the song. Escuchará una canción. They will work in Spain. Trabajarán en España. We will draw a garden. Dibujaremos un jardín. You will speak Spanish fluently. Hablarás español con fluidez. Well done. But let's remember, how many groups of verbs have we got? That's right, we have 3 different groups of verbs. Shall we take a look at the pattern for the other 2? I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised. I've popped hablaré to the left-hand side now. Let's bring out our friend comer. Comer helping us learn our ER verb endings. Say them after me. Comeré. Comerás. Comerá. Comeremos. Comeréis. Comerán. Yep, they are exactly the same as our AR endings too. What about our friend Babier, who helps us learn our endings for our IR verbs? Do you think it's going to be third time lucky? Let's take a look. Vivire, vivirás, vivirá, viviremos, viviréis, vivirán. Finally, what did you notice? Absolutely the same. All the way across the board, it doesn't matter if they're AR, ER, or IR verbs, they're going to take the exact same endings on the verb to conjugate them in the future. And we add them on to the infinitives. Finally, shall we get some practice in? Here's a range of ER and IR verbs: romper, correr, comer, elegir, and discutir. Can you generate some sentences again for me? Hit pause as you work your way through this. We will run every day. Correremos todos los días. He will eat lots of fruits. Comerá mucha fruta. I will choose water. Elegiré agua. You will not break your promise. No romperás tu promesa. They will discuss the news. Discutirán las noticias. I hope you got full marks with our second practice. Well done, everybody. Now, obviously, I've given you a really great conjugation there, all of those lovely regular verbs taking the same endings, doing the same thing. But of course, there's going to be some irregulars, isn't there? Always in all languages, not just in Spanish. Very similarly to the conditional tense, if you know your way around that tense, you'll know where I'm going with this one. There are a handful of irregulars in the future tense. What happens in this, however, is that the verbs take an irregular stem, but they use the same endings as all the other verbs. In fact, the irregular stems that we use in the future tense are the same irregular stems we would use in the conditional. So these guys are almost buddying up. Let's take a little look then, shall we? Here is our first bank of irregular verbs in the future tense. We have tener, poner, valer, salir, and venir. Let's take a look at what their stems would look like. So as you've seen in the previous screen, we're going to add the same endings as we have been doing for the verb so far. But what's going to happen is the stem is going to change. The bit you put the endings onto is going to be different. So instead of saying in Spanish, tenere, tenerás, tenerá, the tener bit is going to change to tendre. Tendré, tendrás, tendrá, tendremos, tendréis, tendrán. Do we follow that? Well, it's the same for the rest of the script. Poner becomes pondre, valer, valdre, salir, saldre, and venir, vendre. Here, what's happening is the E or the I, tener, salir, the second last letter, is being replaced with the letter D. It's almost like the E and I have disappeared out and the D's moved along, and then we stick the endings on the end. Let's take a look at our next group of irregulars who have a very similar pattern, the verb poder, saber, caber, and querer. Similarly to the previous one, this is a stem that's going to change here. So we're not going to say poderé, poderás, poderá. What are we going to say? Podr, with the endings on the end. Podré, podrás, podrá. Similar thing happens with saber, caber, and querer. We've got an R appearing, haven't we there? Here, the E or the I is completely vanishing out, isn't it? The E or the I is vanishing completely, and this dr sound is coming at the end. Hacer and decir are also two other regular verbs in the future tense in Spanish, with the stems looking like ar and dir. There's only one final, this one is completely irregular, only one final other little one, and it's the future tense of the common word I, meaning there is or there are. To say there will be, we say habrá. So to get some practice in for this one, let's grab a few more common irregular verbs this time, the verb tener, salir, hacer, poder, and venir. To help you out, I've given you also what the stems look like. Can you form some future tense sentences? We will go out every night. Saldremos todas las noches. We will have lots of friends. Tendremos muchos amigos. I will make the beds tomorrow. Haré las camas mañana. You'll come to my office. Vendrás a mi oficina. He will be able to speak Spanish fluently. I made this one harder for you because we then need to put in to be able to speak beside each other. Podrá hablar español con fluidez. Why not get a bit of extra help and practice here? Choose one or two of the irregular future tense verbs and write out the conjugations in full. Can you make a guess as to what ir or ser might look like? Yep, unusually for them, ir and ser are going to take the same endings as regulars. Ir and ser are completely regular in the future tense. I will go, iré. I will be, seré. As a final little challenge for you, I have a gap fill where you're going to try to pop in the endings that you need on the verbs to make sense in Spanish. Hit pause as you work your way through this final challenge. Participaré, ganará, será, serán, escucharás, and estudiará. Read those sentences out loud and see if you can translate them also back into English. Muy bien hecho a todos. Well done, everybody who's joined for this lesson today as we explore the two different ways of speaking in the future. In Spanish, we have the near future, the going to tense, using the verb ir, voy, vas, va, vamos, vais, van, with a and the verb, the thing you're going to do, and the future, simple future tense, where you're going to add the endings onto the stems. How cool was that? I hope you've understood that well if you're learning with us and have any questions or queries, contact your class tutor directly. And if you like, you can pop some questions or comments in the chat section below. We're here to help you every step of the way in your language learning journey. Hasta la próxima, todos. Until next time, everyone. Adiós y muchas gracias.